So I got this back at the shop. I have a rear disc brake kit from East West Off-Road that I'm going to throw on this 14 bolt, mainly because it's going to be lighter, and rear drum brakes are a pain in the butt to deal with. They're heavy, awkward, there's a lot of work just to get in there to look at your shoes. So I've got this kit from East West Off-Road. I'm going to show you it. It says it's a 70-pound box. I cheated and grabbed the dolly. So I'm really excited about this. So this is a rear disc brake kit for my square body for the 14 bolt. All right. So we have in here, should be a pair of calipers. Yep. Pair of complete loaded calipers, brand new, with the e-brake. Pair of those. Some braided steel brake lines. And bolts, I'm assuming, for the backing plate. And a pair of rotors. And a pair of brackets. I'm not sure if these are raw steel or powder coated. They've got a coating of some sort on them. Really clean, really nice. Maybe, yeah, it's a coating. I might throw a little paint on that just to keep them from rusting. I think it looks like just maybe a primer on it. Anyhow, I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm under the impression that you can use this kit without a proportioning valve to adjust the bias for the front, between the front and the rear. I am going to use a proportioning valve just so it's right. I'm considering installing it without, just so we can see the difference, just so we know, kind of an experiment. But I will be using a proportioning valve. And I'm really excited about putting this kit on. So let's do it. All right, I decided I needed to check the thread engagement for future. It's recommended 5/8 of an inch. So I got the wheel on here, one nut holding it on, and I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. In this gauge here, I don't think I'm getting fully to the bottom of the seat, but I'm getting to the end of the stud. That is, I don't know if you can see it. Got 11/16, which is more than 5/8, and I'm probably actually even more than that. That's good. So anyhow, as of now, I know I have enough thread engagement. We'll see what happens with the going from a drum to a rotor. There could be a variance in thickness on the rotor, could be thicker, but as for right now, we look good. So I'll get the wheels rest of the way off and start tearing into it. Okay, in here, there's a little tab. There it is. That's folded over into one of these little pockets. And then you just bend that tab over in there. And that's where your socket fits in here. Sometimes these are pretty hard to get off. So we'll back this nut off. And then behind it, see how nice that fits in there? And behind this is the cage. And then you have an inner nut that usually isn't very tight. Should be able to just spin it off. You can use a socket, or sometimes it's just easier to try your coordination and pull it off like this. Get in there. Another inner lock washer. And now, if my brake shoes aren't too tight, I should be able to pull this drum off. Oh, then we can pull this off, set her down. And then we need to pull the backing plates off. There's just 4 bolts in here holding it on. And then you have your brake line. It'd really be easy just to cut this line you're not going to reuse them and you don't care, just cut it. Two bolts on here. I don't know if the newer ones are like that. I don't remember seeing that. Okay. Now we just need to clean this up. I'm going to take a wire wheel and clean all the rust off of this flange here. Maybe throw a little paint on there too. But I need to get this clean for that caliper plate. Well, I don't want to beat up my floor, so putting a chunk of plywood down. I have ordered studs. I have studs coming for this if I need them. But if I don't, then I'm just going to reuse what I got. You know, look at all that junk. So I've heard there's a 40-pound difference between this drum brake set and the new disc brake kit. So, I mean, that's nice, 40 pounds. But the simplicity of disc brakes versus drum brakes is, I mean, look at all that junk. You can't even, with the drums, you can't even get in to inspect your brakes. There's little inspection holes in here. These little guys. It's just a lot of things that can go wrong with drum brakes. It worked good. I'm expecting the discs to work better. If you go through a big puddle of water, they're going to work better. Drum brakes always seem like they hold a bunch of water inside. So anyhow, I do need to clean these up, and I'll shoot some paint on them before I start assembling, and I'll get the rest of that cleaned up and get the brake lines off. Just get everything out of the way that I don't need. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take care of that, and then we'll get into installation. Well, I got this all cleaned up. This is the rotor mating surface. It's very important that that's clean. And then this is the wheel mating surface, and I recommend cleaning that as well. Well, I measured the thickness of the drum, and it was an eighth inch thick. And then I measured the thickness of the rotor, and the rotor is 3/8. It gives me a 1/4 inch difference. 1/4 inch difference between the two. Well, I decided to go ahead and paint these a little different color. They were black. I wanted them this silver. It's kind of a cast iron color. So the caliper bracket opening should be facing towards the rear, and the offset should be outward for the correct fitment. Get this on here, and I'm gonna make sure I get these started really good before I hammer them down. Now, if you feel like this is sitting in here a little tight, make sure and just kind of bounce back and forth in a star pattern so that you pull it up even, because you probably could bend this if you just forced this one down and then went to the backside and forced it down. You could potentially bend it. And if you don't get enough of this rust and debris out of here, it could create a problem. This one, it fits really good on here. I don't have any problems. So these should be torqued to 105 foot-pounds. I guess it's important that your brakes don't fall off. That'd be bad news. You'd be the first to know. There we go. $105. Okay. I like to use anti-seize on wheel studs. They go on a little easier. These studs, I would recommend, depending on your wheels, plan on doing longer wheel studs just to be safe. When you're doing any of this stuff, replacing wheel studs and whatnot, I would recommend to replace your seals. And always take a good look at your threads. Make sure they're not all boogered up, cross-threaded, chunks missing. If they are, it's a good time to replace them. Okay, got these all put together. And I'm ready to throw them in now, and we can start assembling all of this stuff. Well, I got to thinking about it, and I tore back into here and replaced these studs. The thickness of the wheel and the way the lug nuts look like. Well, let me show you this. So I got some new lug nuts, but I was looking at the old lug nuts and comparing them to the new lug nut, and right in here on this old lug nut, there's pretty close to a quarter inch of space between the end of the nut and where the threads start. So I got some new nuts that are like, they start right at the end of the cone. So that'll take care of that. I could have probably done just fine with a better set of nuts, but I just thought it'd be best to replace the studs. If I put a steel wheel on here, these old studs would have been fine. So I ordered 2 different sets of studs, but I was thinking that this one here was the shorter studs. I was thinking it was the direct replacement for this one, but there's about a quarter inch difference between this stud and this one. And then I also got the long ones. There's 3/4 of an inch longer engagement there. The long wheel stud is a 610194. The shorter one is 610189. So I upgraded wheel studs just to do it right. I was right here. I was so close to finishing, but not so far along that it wasn't too much work to tear back in here to replace wheel studs. So that's what I get for thinking. So anyhow, back to this. I'm going to torque this up. This inner nut, you have to go through a little torque sequence. You start out at 50 pounds. 50 pounds on it. Then you back it off and retorque it to 35. And then you're supposed to back it off a quarter turn, which seems a little loose to me, but I don't hardly feel, I can hear it, but I don't feel any end play. Then we'll go ahead and throw our locking cage in here and the outer nut. Then you torque the outer one to 65. Oops. If you don't already have a spanner socket for these axle nuts, pick one up. They're not too expensive. I got this one on Amazon, and it was a lot cheaper than I thought, and it sure makes your work a lot easier. So check that out. Get one of those. And then all I have to do now is just bend this tab over into that groove. Well, this is all set up good. I think at this point, I'm going to build me some brake lines. I just need to make 2 short brake lines to run to a transition that I have to weld. I got to weld a tab on the axle tube to go from where the transition is from the hard line to the flexible line, which will be in here somewhere. So let's do that, and then we'll jump over to the e-brakes. All right, to do the rear brake lines, these are the lines that came with it, nice flexible braided steel lines, the mounting tabs and clips. And then to go from the junction to each wheel, I got this kit. This is a 3/16 nickel copper line. And this kit actually came with fittings. So I only needed 4 of these fittings. So I'll just have to cut the length, the pieces I need, and bend them to the shapes I want, or really close, and then I can put these fittings on, just flare the ends, and should be able to bolt all this together at that point. But this kit was pretty cool. It came with a lot of fittings. When I go to do the proportioning valve, I'll probably mount that by the master cylinder. I would love to have that mounted where I could access it in the cab. That'd be so handy. But I'll probably just do it simple and mount it to the master cylinder, or right off the side of the master cylinder. But it came with fittings that I need for that as well. Here, I don't remember which one it is. It might be that one. But anyhow, so this kit will set me up good. I can put a link in the description for that and everything else. I'll put these on the calipers and figure out where these tabs are going to go, and then maybe get the tabs welded on, and then I'll know what I need to do here. I guess. I think I will run these up here like this. More out of the way here. Okay, I think we can weld that right there on top. As long as I don't weld this where it's going to make this brake line too short, we'll be all right. I think that'll be okay there. I brought a Sharpie so I can mark that where I want it. Oh, I didn't bring a very good one. And let's figure out this one here too. Mount that one right on top there. Okay, I think that'll do. Now I'll clean the paint off of there. I'll probably knock that little tab off both sides. I left the junction block where it was, ran the hard lines, welded on these little tabs to transition the hard line to the flexible line. I just put some real heavy tack welds on there to hold that. That's going to be good. That's clipped into place. The lines are ran around the back here and hooked up that way. The e-brake cables, I decided to go over the spring and over the axle just to eliminate any potential rubbing it on something, pinching it, breaking it, whatever. The cable itself was a little difficult getting through this spring. I had to pull the spring out, run the cable through the spring, through the lower bracket, through the spring, and then get the spring back in place, and then hook the little end into the bracket there, into the arm. I gravity bled this thing this morning, so I got fluid to the calipers. Calipers are mostly full. There's some air in there, I'm sure. And we'll get that power bled out later. But I wanted to address some of these things here. I had seen, and I'm going to do it, some guys have made brackets to put in here into this cable so that it's solid. This isn't just moving around and wiggling as you're trying to apply that brake. This will help hold everything in place and give it some rigidity and help the cable pull like it should. So I will weld those on, little brackets like this. I got 2 of them. Just whipped out some little guys. We'll weld those on. And I don't know if that's the right way. I have seen where some guys have run underneath the axle, and that's probably the way it's designed. The angle here would be better for that. You can do what you feel is right. This is a 73, and I discovered that 73 and I think 74 and 75 have different rear brake cables that have a bracket crimped on the end of it that actually bolted to the backing plate instead of clipping into it. I had to cut that stuff off just to get the cable where I could use it right. So I did have to do a little work there, but 73, this thing's old as the ark, so I wasn't surprised. So I'm going to go ahead and weld these tabs on here, and then I can bleed this out better and throw tires on and go for a spin. Yeah. On this thing. Oops. Dang it. All right, so all we need to do here is set this spring in front of this bracket. So this is all set up. I need to do some adjustment on the main brake cable. It is a little sloppy. I might have to shorten it. This is kind of an awkward setup here. I had shortened the wheelbase on this pickup by cutting the frame, which shortened my cable length. So I had pulled everything out. So I had to put it all back in. The cable is slightly too long, so I need to make an adjustment on that, shorten it up. Not a big deal. If you're not changing anything, I mean, this is kind of a unique mess. But if you're just installing it on your pickup, you're not going to have any trouble like I have, especially if it's not a early model square body. So let me make some adjustments on this brake cable. When I get all done with that, should be able to throw tires on it and take it for a test drive without the proportioning valve. And then we'll put that proportioning valve in it and see how much better it is. I'm sure it's going to be way better with the valve, but I'm just curious what the difference is going to be, because so far it kind of seems like it's a recommendation, and I just want to know what the bias difference is between the front and the rear. So anyhow, I'm going to finish this up and we'll come back. Well, here's the final wrap up. This is the East-West Off-Road 14-bolt disc brake conversion kit. Everything went on easy and without problems. We did have a few extra things like wheel studs that we needed to address, depending on your wheels, if you're aluminum versus steel. You may or may not need to replace those. If you're using aluminum wheels, I recommend replacing the wheel studs. That's a good time to replace wheel seals as well, and or lug nuts. So think about those things while you're doing it. I did have to pick up a few extra things that the kit didn't have that wasn't necessary in the kit, but like brake lines, you possibly could reuse what you have. I wanted to redo that, so I got a brake line kit, lug nuts, wheel studs, all these extra things that I will put a link in my description for if you're interested in any of that. But the kit was great. So check out East West Off-Road. Check out their website. They get a lot of stuff on there, and they're getting more all the time. Good quality parts, good people to work with. Check them out. Now, I did take this for a drive after I got it out of the shop in the gravel in front of the shop. And at about 5 miles an hour, hit the brakes, came to a quick stop, hardly skid a tire, which I was surprised. Then I took it out on the pavement, 35 miles an hour, and jammed on the brakes again. Didn't skid a tire, and it stopped pretty quick. But I really expected the rears to be locking up, and they didn't. So I either need to do some adjustments or I don't need a proportioning valve. I expect, and these brakes aren't broken yet, so that could be some of it as well. So there's a little bit more to do, I think, but I'm going to deal with the proportioning valve and any adjustments I need to make in a later video. Won't be the next video, but coming up soon, we'll cover the manual proportioning valve install and everything that goes with that. So with that being said, I think I've covered everything. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we will catch up with you guys later. Bye.